Welcome to another edition of Celtic Chalk Talk. My name's Steve Purciello, lifelong Celtic fan. Go back to the Bill Russell days. Have stories about all of them. Have been telling a few of them as we go through my countdown of top 10 all-time Celtics. Today we're at number 7. But before I even get going on that, I want to talk about something. This podcast you're listening to is part of a network of podcasts on the thePeachBasket. Peachbasket.net is where you would find us. There's a bunch of independent, and I say independent, we're not affiliated, we don't write for anybody, we have our own thoughts and our own opinions, and we write and do podcasts. If you like this podcast, which I hope naturally you do, I suggest strongly that you go onto the website, look, because there's a lot of good stuff, good written information about the NBA, as well as some great podcasts. We are fans of the NBA, and we think it is a great league, and we like to talk about it. I, as a Celtic fan, will talk about that. Others, as different teams fans, will talk about their team, and we contribute to a pretty good independent network. Today, number 7, and it's somebody that most people know who he is. It's Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce grew up in Inglewood, California, was a Laker fan. This is ironic because as a Laker fan, the last place he'd want to go is go to the Celtics, but that's where he did. When he did go to the University of Kansas and so on, had a great career at Kansas. In fact, his number 34 was retired from there as well as the Celtics, which I'll mention. But he was picked number 10 in the draft. Now, that ticked Pierce off. The Celtics were lucky enough to get him in a tough time when the Celtics were going through tough times, and they came up with a true star. He won a title, only one title, and it's very hard to put him higher, although his numbers and things were just tremendous in his career, as good as most Celtics, many of the better Celtics, rather. He was a Finals MVP, 10-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA. Just think about that, 10-time All-Star. I believe he played with the Celtics for 13 years. So that's pretty good, obviously. He just a Hall of Famer. He won the three-point shooting contest in 2010. Pierce was not known for his shooting of the three. And in fact, if you watched him when he shot the three, I'm not going to say it was a set shot, but it was pretty much not getting off the ground much. And it was just a shot when he took it wide open, and he was pretty good at it, of course. He's also a member of the 75th anniversary team. So you can, 75th anniversary team, he's one of the top 75 of all time. So just from that, you can tell this man is just was a tremendous player. His number, as I said before, was retired. He ended with 26,397 points. I believe he passed Bird. I think he's probably number 2 all time as a Celtic scorer. Just a great career. Now, up until 2007, outside of the 1 year when the Celtics lost in the semifinals to the Nets in the conference semifinals, the Celtics were never real good. It was the ML Carr year, all those bad years strung together, Pitino, and so on. So in 2006 or 7, he wanted to get traded. He was done. And in fact, there was rumor that there was a trade, I believe, with Dallas and Atlanta that really didn't come off. There was a fight over a first-round draft pick, and the trade was pulled back, I think, by Atlanta, but I'm not great on that. But in 2002, one of the few times the Celtics were in the playoffs and doing well, they played the Nets in a playoff game. The Nets were pretty good at this time. They had Jason Kidd and so on. Now, Boston was down by, I believe, 21 going into the fourth quarter. It's one of the all-time, I think it's the 4th biggest comeback of all time in NBA history. Pierce led them in the fourth quarter. He had 28 for the game, but he had 19. And he led the Celtics to this amazing comeback. And his scoring was the reason for it. But It was something that was big at the time. I remember John Bagley playing and just the Celtics stealing the game. It was a great game to watch as a Celtic fan. It's one of the many great games I've watched as Celtic fans. Like I said, he was disgusted by 2007. What the Celtics did, instead of trading him, he did one out. What they did instead, that summer they went out, they got Kevin Garnett, and they got Ray Allen. Now, first they got Ray Allen, and Garnett wanted to see, before he came to the Celtics, wanted to see the Celtics show more than just Paul Pierce as a star. They did get Ray Allen, and then by the end of July, Boston Celtics got Garnett, July 31st, I believe, and he became a Celtic. And that was the trade that really solidified the Celtics and made them good with Coach Doc Rivers, who Pierce at first was at odds with and came to love him. In fact, I believe when Rivers gets in the Hall of Fame next week, he and Garnett will be people, and maybe Ray Allen, but they will be giving the introductory speech for Rivers. So it changed completely, probably because of that group. And if you remember that group, they did get Garnett on the 31st. They traded Al Jefferson, who became a real good pro, a good post-up player, and Ryan Gomes and a few other people. But in that trade, that getting Garnett was big from Minnesota, and I might add the general manager of Minnesota at the time was somebody we all know well, Kevin McHale. So anyway, that's another story. There's always been talk about McHale gave him to Boston because he might have gone to the Lakers. The Lakers had a deal, trying to make a deal also at the time, but he did end up a Celtic. Which made the Celtics great. That summer, in the fall when they went to camp, Boston didn't go to camp. They did do a trip. They did go to camp, but they did a trip to Rome. And that's where the whole Ubuntu with Doc Rivers and the team about all together and so on started. The team was outstanding, and they were really a start to finish. They were the best team in the league. They culminated by beating the Lakers in the finals 4-2. And in the sixth game, when they won it, they just blew away the Lakers. And that was back in Boston. Now, in that series, and Paul Pierce he's not well loved by a lot of the press, but in that series, game one, he got hurt, supposedly, serious injury, taken off in a wheelchair, came back, finished the game, and Celtics won, and people were like, what a phony, and he took a beating for that. But the Celtics did go on to win the championship. Now, you get to 2009 with the Celtics, Pierce at that point, and the Celtics were great, and they got off to a great start, but unfortunately, Kevin Garnett was injured during that season. And he didn't come back, and Boston ended up in a great series against the Chicago Bulls, but they ended up getting knocked out of the playoffs because they didn't have Garnett. I thought, would have won a title that year. Then we kick into 2010, and the Celtics played the Lakers in the finals. They led 3-2 in that series, went back to LA, lost the last two games, including blowing a lead in Game 7. But Pierce, of course, was the best player. Finals MVP in 08. He was the guy that took the big shots, which I'll talk about in a minute. But he was that guy on that team. Garnett was great. Garnett was a great player. In doing this list, I had to think about that, but I came up with the idea. They only won one title, so I couldn't put more than one Celtic. It was hard to put more than one Celtic in the top 10. So, anyway, 2010 comes along, and they lose in Game 7. Now they're getting old, Garnett and Pierce and all. 2011, they got knocked out quickly by the LeBron Heat in the conference semifinals. I think it was 4-1. 2012 was it was like the last ride for this group. It wasn't the last, but it was one of the last rides. In 2012, they got to play the Heat again. They had a 3-2 lead going into Game 6 of the series. That's the night in Boston, and you figure coming back to Boston with a 3-2 lead, Boston could pull the upset. The old guys are rising. Anyway, LeBron had one of the greatest games of his career. They won, and then they won Game 7 back in Miami, and Boston gets knocked out. And that's really the last with the Celtics, although they played another year, 13, and in 2013, the Knicks beat them in the first round, and it was over. They were getting too old. And what's really ironic is the trading of Garnett and Pierce led to Boston getting Jaylen Brown and Tatum when they traded them to the Nets for the draft picks. That's a little side thing. My memory of Paul Pierce was he was a great clutch player, could shoot, would get the ball. Boston didn't run any plays at the end of the game. They got the ball to Pierce and basically got out of his way. I can remember a great game in Madison Square Garden. This had to be like in January of one of those years. And Garnett and Carmelo Anthony were really going at it, and I thought there could be a fight. And there was all kinds of rumors after the game that they met up on a loading dock or some other stuff. But during the game, there was a few seconds left, and Pierce got the ball on the left side, hit a step back three. That was just an amazing shot. And I used that not because it was a big game or any of that, but because that was what Pierce did. Pierce was the closer. Pierce got the ball, cleared it out. No great play Doc Rivers ran, but he would always take that shot and usually hit it. Good, just a tremendous clutch player. That was my fondest memory of Pierce, that he could win games on his own. And that's why, again, I put him ahead of the other two Celtics. Anyway, that's the end of today's little talk about Boston Celtics and my top players of all time. And again, we put Paul Pierce right there. Thank you, and listen again for number 6 as we move along.